Well, good morning, everybody. At least it's morning where I am. Um, Uncle Ken here again, and what I thought we might talk about today is cybersecurity. I spent about 10 years in that industry. Um, Pretty misunderstood technologies by the general public and even by many professional people in cybersecurity. Anyway, the idea behind cybersecurity is if you've got a network of computers, you really want to protect them from unauthorized access, right? And it actually began back in the 1980s by Digital Equipment Corporation. They really invented the idea of peer to peer networking. They invented the idea of modern servers as we know them today. And they quickly realized if they had all these servers on a network, that if someone gained access to the network, unauthorized access, they could be in a lot of trouble. And they developed a thing called a firewall. And the idea, just as you might imagine, has become part of our popular vernacular, is it's something that sits on the edge of a network. Think of a gated community, right? You've got a guard at the gate. He's not letting anybody in unless they got a pass, right? So that's what a firewall does. Industry slowly realized that's a great idea, and you want to keep the enemies outside the gate. But what happens if the enemies are inside the gate? They've managed to climb the wall, no one knows they're there, and they're moving house to house and stealing things. That's called lateral movement. So somehow they've evaded that firewall, and now they're within your network and moving computer to computer. So what do you do now? Well, if you've only got a firewall, you don't do anything because you don't even know they're there. Once they're inside the network, they're moving laterally. Firewall can't do anything to help you. So they developed different things for the industry. One was endpoint protection. So you put a piece of software on each computer that protects it from breaches. Very similar to a firewall, except rather than protecting the entire network at the outside perimeter, you've got an individual piece of software that's protecting each individual device. Again, great idea. Looking for strange anomalies, strange things that could come and disturb your network. Even that wasn't enough. What if someone sends an email attachment? And of course, we're all familiar with this today, but 20 years ago, not so much. What if someone sends an email attachment, right? In an email, you don't know really what the attachment is. The email comes from someone you think you can trust. So you open that attachment. Oops. The minute you open the attachment puts a piece of software on your machine and probably laterally moves and puts a piece of software on everybody's machine. So they figured, endpoint's not quite enough, is it? So we need some form of email protection to protect us from these vicious, malicious pieces of software that people would add as an attachment to the email. And a lot of that is user error, user training, but nonetheless, happens all the time. Someone gets an email with an attachment in it. They open the attachment and oops, now they've fired off a piece of malicious software that's quietly spreading in the whole network. So you've got a firewall at the outside gate. He's essentially the guy or gal that's in your guardhouse, protecting your community at the outside gate. Then you've got endpoint protection on each computer, looking for something malicious to show up. And now you've got email protection. Okay, that email protection is going to most probably protect you from malicious attachments as part of your email structure. Still not good enough. And here's the real interesting key. So there's a thing in the computer world called administrative credentials, admin credentials. And every computer that was ever built comes with an admin account. They have an admin user and password account on that machine, be it a desktop, be it a notebook, be it a server. There's an admin user account on that machine that allows you to go in and change certain things in the registry and very deep pockets of the operating system that a normal user can't access. So this is admin credentials. There's generally two types of admin credentials. There's the local admin credential. There's one on every PC, every notebook, every server. And that is literally shipped from the factory with that operating system. You've got an admin username and password on that individual device. But there's also network admin credentials, and these are the real nasty ones. So say you're at a help desk in a large corporation. You may be called by anybody at any time to help them with a problem they have with their computer. Their computer's locked up. They've managed to open a malicious piece of software, and they don't know what to do about it. So they call the help desk. Can you help me? The help desk says, can I have access to your machine? The user says, oh yeah, I can't use it. Please do. So the help desk will use an admin credential, a network admin credential. They'll jump on that machine and fix most probably whatever was wrong with it. So these administrative credentials, usually used by network security personnel, used by help desk personnel, as opposed to the local admin credentials, one on every machine. These network admin credentials allow typically highly technical users to access any number of computers. In fact, there are many, many cases I've seen where there'll be, in a large corporation, say with 20,000 employees, there might be 100 network credentials that can touch every machine in the network. So say you have 20,000 desktops and or notebooks, and you have 10,000 servers. Well, these network admin credentials can touch all 30,000 devices, just one credential. Now, if that credential gets compromised, you be in deep doo-doo. You're in big trouble. So, about 25 years ago, a company called CyberArk came up with the idea, hey, we need to manage and protect these admin credentials because they're the most dangerous thing in a computing environment. It's like having the keys to a kingdom, a master key. If you're working security in a mall with 200 stores, you might have one key that unlocks every store in the mall. Well, you're part of the security team. You need that. But if that key falls into the wrong hands, oops, bad news for all the stores because someone's got a master key. So it's the same kind of concept with admin credentials in a compute network. And it's not unusual for 50, 100, 200 admin credentials in any corporate computer network to have access to all of the computers on the network. And many of the admin credentials, the network admin credentials, will have access to hundreds or thousands of computers if they don't have access to all of them. So what do you do? What do you do about these admin credentials? Very dangerous things. If they end up in the wrong hands, you can have a lot of trouble. And in fact, I've seen different numbers, anywhere from 50 to 80% of all computer breaches involve compromised or stolen admin credentials. Well, let's say it's just 50%. Let's say that's the low end and we'll be conservative. Well, 50% of all computer breaches being driven by admin credential compromise, that's a big number. So what do you do about these admin credentials? The first idea was proffered by a company, I think they were out of Israel, called CyberArk. Pardon me, a little coffee. And CyberArk looked at it and said, okay, we've got this big server farm with all of our key data, the keys to our kingdom out there. We want to protect that big server farm. And we have all these admin credentials. So what are we going to do? So here's the idea. They created a vault. They decided to put the admin credentials in that vault. And you needed to check out your admin credential when you needed to use it. On paper, it sounds like a great idea. But in reality, it's cumbersome and hard to manage. So they limited the number of admin credentials that they would put in a vault. You might have, 20, 30, 40,000 admin credentials in a typical corporate computer network. And so CyberArk could take a couple thousand of those and put those over in this vault. And those are mainly the credentials that have access to the servers. So it sounds great. Oh boy, we've got this admin credential problem under control. Well, okay, you've got 2,000 of them in a vault. How about the other 38,000? 20,000 that are sitting on the individual machines, and another 18,000 network admin credentials. Well, we're going to kind of ignore them and pretend like they don't exist. What? What? Wait a minute. You're going to ignore them and pretend like they don't exist? I don't know. That's not a good idea. That's like pretending you've got 20,000 thieves in your neighborhood and you're only worried about 2,000 of them. The other 18,000, we're going to pretend like they don't exist. It's not a good strategy, right? Because those other 18,000 are going to haunt you and most likely compromise you badly. And that's exactly what happened. So we have this idea of a vault and keeping, say, a couple thousand admin credentials in that vault. What are we going to do about the other 18,000? So different companies have taken different approaches to the other 18,000, the great unwashed admin credentials that in fact exist. And if the wrong one ends up in the wrong hands, potentially the bad actor that has compromised that credential might be wandering around that network. And who knows, like I found out, he or she could be having fun and games with the CEO's laptop. So let me tell you a quick story about admin credentials. So I get a call and I'm selling privileged access management. That's what the software come to be known as. CyberArk, Beyond Trust. There's a number of companies that are in the industry that provide privileged access management or PAM solutions. So I get a call from a company in Orange County, California, not going to mention their name. And they said, geez, Ken, some of our friends from Russia are wandering around our network and we don't know how they got in. And in fact, they've locked up the CEO's notebook. So we need this fixed right now. So I went over there and I said, geez, what are you doing about your admin credentials? And it turned out they had taken, I think they had 8,000 endpoint computers. So they had taken all the individual local admin credentials on those 8,000 devices and changed the name to admin, username, let's change it to admin. And the password, they changed to password. Well, let me repeat that. These are grown men and women. They took the user admin name on every computer and changed it to admin. And they took the password that went along with that admin account and changed it to password. Now, why would someone do that? That's really dangerous. The reason they would do that is so someone at the help desk, right? They get a call from a VP who's upset his notebook is locked up. Well, they only have to remember that the local administrator credential, the user is admin, and the password is password. So it makes it way easier for the help desk. So it made some sense to do that, right? From a productivity standpoint. The only problem is our friends from Russia figured it out pretty quickly. So our friends from Russia, as we call it in the industry, they owned that customer. So we were called in and they said, geez, we got a real problem with our admin credentials. And I said, let me take a look at it. Went in with my engineer. And they said, geez, we really want you to protect our 600 servers. They're the most important thing. And we explained to them that that is important and we want to do that for sure. But we really want to protect all of your devices on the network. You've got 8,000 and all 8,000 are potential portals for bad actors to come in. And in this case, once they figured out the admin credential for one, they had the admin credential for all. So we helped them and we installed our software. But that brings up a very interesting issue relative to protecting admin credentials in a corporate network. Little mocha Java. Thank you. So what do you do about the admin credentials that are being used by software applications? They're not being used by human beings. They're being used by software applications. And these are typically called service accounts. And you have hundreds of them in corporate America, right? One, as an example, I'll tell you another story. One might be a service account that's attached to a network management software. So you've got a network management software. It needs to look at everything on the network, all the switches, all the printers, and all the computers. Everything on that network, this network management software needs to access. With what? An admin credential. So you assign an admin credential to this network software, and it can touch everything on your network. Well, I'll tell you another story. And I will use this company's name. And it really wasn't their fault, but it kind of was, but not really. SolarWinds, okay? You might have heard about the great breach about 4 years ago now with SolarWinds, and they breached everybody, all the main players, every security company, software, cybersecurity company got hacked. As smart as they were, they got hacked. How did that happen? Well, someone, some real bright someone, tunneled into SolarWinds and put a small little piece of malware software, vicious malware software, in their next update. SolarWinds didn't know. So SolarWinds goes up, and you all see it with your iPhone or with your Mac or your PC. Oh, we've updated the OS. You get a note on your iPhone. Oh, Apple OS 16.2551 has just been updated. You go, oh, great. I've got the latest and greatest software. Well, SolarWinds update, which they updated to all their customers, right? Downloaded over the network, automatically installs, boom, don't even know what happened. Included some malicious software that piggybacked on top of SolarWinds admin credentials. So the admin credential for SolarWinds was allowing this malicious software to go everywhere it wanted. It hit the U.S. government. It hit corporate America. It hit higher ed, healthcare. It hit them all. And boy, no one wanted to talk about that. You didn't hear much about that. You heard about it, and then you didn't hear much about it ever again because it exposed the vulnerability of virtually everybody's network. So if you attach a malicious piece of software to some networking software that's designed to manage your network, and as such has admin capability to every device on the network, oh boy, you have real trouble if someone compromises, in this case, the SolarWinds software, which they did. Very complicated to fix that. So what do? You really don't want to use this vault thing because it only manages a couple thousand of your admin credentials. You might have 18,000 admin credentials floating around the wilds of your network. So what do? The first thing you got to do, right, is you got to figure out how many admin credentials you got in the network. You can't say, oh, we're just going to put 2,000 in a vault and we'll be good, because everyone knows that makes no sense. Common sense tells you you're not going to be good, and you're not. So what do? The vault's a good idea for the 2,000 admin credentials that are there. But how about the other 18,000? You need some way to do a near real-time canvassing of your network and figure out, okay, how many admin credentials do I really truly have on my network? And the number is astounding. I worked a project where a company had 20,000 employees, 10,000 servers. It was a very high-tech company. I won't tell you what business they're in, but a high-tech company. 10,000 servers, 20,000 employees. So you think, okay, 10,000 servers, 20,000 notebooks, for argument's sake, that's 30,000 devices. So they have at least 30,000 admin credentials because remember, part of the lesson, every machine comes with an admin credential, be it local or be it a network admin credential. So we've got at least 30,000 admin credentials. It turned out they had 50,000 admin credentials. We had a product that would do a canvassing, go out and understand every admin credential operating in the network. 50,000 admin credentials. And of those 50,000, 3,000 of those admin credentials had access to over 5,000 of the devices on their network. So 30,000 devices and 3,000 credentials, if I remember correctly, had access to up to 5,000 of those devices. That's dangerous. And roughly 100 of their network admin credentials had access to every device on their network, all 30,000 devices. 100 different admin credentials could manage all of them. Question 1 for our pop quiz. What happens if someone compromises one of those admin credentials that can access every computing device on the network? What happens? Ooh, a lot of bad things. A lot of bad things happen. You can be ransomed. They can lock up some of your key database servers and say, hey, you want this stuff back? It's going to cost you. That's one idea. And oh, by the way, that's a multi-billion-dollar business. Locking up machines and then selling back access to the company. Happens every day, all the time, all over the world. So the way to kind of make that stop, right, is get an understanding and get some level of control of all of your admin credentials, not just the key ones that can access the server farm, but all of them. How many do I have? We told the CISO he had 50,000 admin credentials. He almost fell off his chair. So the first problem they teach you in 7th grade algebra is you have to define the problem before you can find the solution to the problem. You got to define that problem before you can craft a solution. So the basic problem that basically everybody in corporate America has to this day, and as well as healthcare, as well as higher ed, as well as government, they do not know how many admin credentials they have in their network. Oh, they'll tell you, oh, we've installed XYZ software and we've got a vault and no one could possibly access our network until someone does. And then they're on the front page of the Wall Street Journal. You never want to be on the front page of the Wall Street Journal with a story about a breach. This is a good way to lose your job. If you have the title CIO, CISO, CEO, good way to lose your job. At any rate, that is a real present problem right now across all of institutional America and all of institutional worldwide. They really don't know how many admin credentials they have in their network. There's ways to do it. There's companies that can help you understand that. I work for a company. I won't mention the name, but I work for a company that had a tool that would go out and canvass the entire network. It would tell you where all the admin credentials were. It would tell you what devices those admin credentials had access to. So that solves the first part of the equation, which is, let's define the problem. Okay, the problem is you've got 50,000 admin credentials. Now, what are we going to do about it? And what we're going to do about it is probably for another video. But I'll tell you just one more quick story. Won't use any names. I'll try not to use any names. But in terms of the arrogance, really, I would say arrogance is the word I wanted to use, that as high as CEOs have about their cybersecurity, the threats to their corporate environment, their understanding of the threats, and then their response to the threats. So I was working for a company, won't mention any names, you probably heard of them. They were calling on a company that does credit checking. You know, when you go to buy a car and they say, okay, Larry, what's your credit score? You know, I don't know. 680, 780, 1,010. I don't know what my credit score is. And they'll tell you. They'll say, oh, your credit score is 715, and we'll give you a loan at 5% based on that credit score. There are three credit reporting bureaus. Not mentioning any names, but we're working with one of them. You can do the math. You could probably figure this out. They showed up in front of Congress. Anyway, we had a couple engineers that were in there looking at their network, and we said, oh, hey, you've got a couple servers over here that are not being protected. They're wide open to vulnerability and breach capability. Well, we had two young guys in there. The CEO called our CEO, and he said, hello, Kevin. I promise not to use any names, but I'm going to use that one. Kevin, get these two snot-nosed punks out of my environment. I have 250 cybersecurity scientists working for me, and they're telling me I've got vulnerability in a couple servers in my data center. Get them out of here. They don't know what they're doing. Kevin said, I'll have them out of there by the end of the day, which he did. That was March. Won't use the year, but it wasn't that long ago. So come July, oops, they made the front page of the Wall Street Journal, not where you want to be. And it talked about a breach. They had a massive breach. This is a credit reporting bureau. They lost 140 million Americans' credit information. 140 million. What are there, 240 million adults in the United States, I'm guessing? So they lost more than half of all the credit information for more than half of the U.S. population. Whoops. And so the CEO was called before Congress. And in July, he went in and they said, geez, we saw this front page headline in the Wall Street Journal. We're very concerned. You you maintain a lot of very important information for hundreds of millions of people in this country. What happened? You know what his first response was? Larry did it. It was Larry's fault, and I had to fire him. I said, oh, Larry, huh? Okay, so they closed the meeting up, let the guy go, and they did a little more back and forth, a little more investigation, talked to a few computer cybersecurity scientists. And he said, we need to get this guy back in here. So they called the CEO back in 3 weeks later. They said, you know, we're really not buying this idea that Larry did it. And the CEO said, yeah, you're right. It wasn't Larry's fault. So bad news. He didn't say this, but bad news. I lied to you the first time he came in. Never a good place to be in front of Congress, right? So yeah, I'm sorry. It really wasn't Larry. It was a process and a team that we had in the data center, and we've changed those processes, and we've talked to the people, and we feel that we've mitigated the problem, and we're good to go. Congress said, okay. So they let the guy go a second time. And the more digging, they went, wait a minute, that's nonsense. That's not what happened. So they called the CEO in a third time. 3 times this sucker got in front of Congress. The CEO. He said, you know, the first time you told us Larry did it. The second time you told us a small team in the data center caused it. We're not buying either one of those. And he said, I've got to fall on my sword. It was me. I knew about the problem and I didn't fix it. I think that was a Wednesday. By Friday, he was unemployed. Okay. So the guy had 3 chances to come clean. He did come clean on the 3rd chance and he got fired. That's an example of the kind of arrogance you'll find in corporate America. They don't want to know they have a problem. They don't want to admit they have a problem. And even once they get breached, they don't want to take accountability for it. So it's a wild and woolly world to work in the cybersecurity industry. You run into all sorts of characters who are convinced they have it all figured out, and none of them do, as it turns out. So that's my overview on cybersecurity with the drill down on privileged access management and PAM solutions. And that is a world that, to quote a CISO from Kingston Technologies, had dinner with him a couple years ago, and he said, Ken, PAM is one of the most misunderstood, underappreciated areas of cybersecurity. I said, I couldn't agree with you more. And it truly is. So maybe on the next Things to Know from Uncle Ken, we'll drill down a little bit on how corporate America really is trying to solve their privileged access management problem and trying to come to grips with admin credentials, because they truly are the most dangerous thing in a computing network. Have a good Tuesday. Later, Gator.